Okay, so now I'm going to introduce our next keynote. Jared Feldman, founder and CEO of Canvas, a company near and dear to my heart. He's the founder and CEO of Canvas. Jared Feldman is leading the charge on how television networks, content creators, and advertisers are measuring the impact of audiences' emotional reaction to content. When he founded Canvas in 2014, Jared created a robust qualitative research offering, which has become the industry standard for emotional analytics. Thanks to Jared's continued vision, Canvas was recently named to the ARF Investors A-List program and currently serves as the only emotion analytics platform to be listed as a Facebook Media Solutions partner. Yay. Canvas is currently the go-to resource for qualitative research for clients like HBO, NBC, Fox, CAA, Showtime, Vivo, and more. Jared is guest lecturer at NYU and is thought leader in social media and emotion measurement, having made contributions to publications like Ad Age, VentureBeat, Mashable, and others. In 2016, he was named to the Synopsys Digital Hit List. Recently, Jared was honored on the Forbes 30 Under 30, I'm under 30 myself, list in the marketing and advertising category, and was a recipient of the 2017 ARF Great Minds Award. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jared.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Teresa, so much. Today's session is entitled Open-End 2.0, Blazing a Trail for Qualitative Insight in the Digital Age. I'm Jared Feldman. I'm the founder and CEO at Canvas. I just want to thank the Media Insights and Engagement Conference for having us. I'm very excited to be here, be in front of many of our esteemed colleagues and partners in the research community. We've been attending this conference for 4 years now. This is our first time as a keynote speaker, and I'm excited to share our evolving thoughts on the industry. We know that the purpose of this conference is to really educate, to inspire, to spark creativity, to share your truth, and ultimately try to usher in innovative methodologies to advance our collective industry. At Canvas, we measure emotional response in dialogue. Oftentimes, it looks something like what you're seeing in front of you. We're looking at tens of millions of tweets and Facebook comments, YouTube and Instagram commentary, and trying to understand how, when people actually express themselves, what is it that they mean? And this is especially difficult with Gen Z and millennials. About 65% of the emotions we express in short-form text and social environments are not actually in Webster's dictionary yet. They're strange phrases and misspellings and emojis, of course, stickers. And so this becomes a challenge for researchers because excitement looks often like this, where, it's back, or I'm stoked, or it's starting, shush, right? We've got someone saying, X marks the spot, says get lit, right? Is anyone feeling lit right now? No? Yes? A little bit? Whoa, we got a few people that are lit. Okay, great. We've focused on advancing our understanding of human emotion, that there's a need for a Rosetta Stone of sorts of how you can interpret how people are feeling, because it's so critical to what we do as researchers. I'm super honored to be leading a group of folks back in New York, and one office dog, that's Duke. He's learning to code on the weekends, I think Java. And we're focused on partnering with many of the major media companies, many of whom are in this room, and Teresa mentioned we're close with Viacom as well, are focused on helping advance and accelerate the feedback loop, in which there is a day-to-day challenge for researchers to help inform, well, what spot do we use? Or character fatigue and plot point development. How do we think about what should happen next time for next season? But it also affects marketing. How do we talk about the things or promote the things? How do we influence perception around these pieces of content? And then, of course, the valuation piece, where it becomes true and obvious that it's not just about audience size. It's about the connection of that audience, especially as we're so distracted. Can you quantify a way to connect emotionally? Now, we've been using social data for years. We've introduced some syndicated, standardized products that allow you to very quickly figure out how people feel and why they feel that way and what impact it has on your business. But what's been humbling and what we learn to be true is what we do with social is really but a speck in the entire research industry. That SMR, in their recent global research report, sized the primary market research space at $40 billion spent globally across categories. And 35 cents of every dollar spent here in America is driven by the people largely in this room, by the media, advertising, and entertainment space. Now, social-based research, this opportunity to use social as a form of social science, as a lens into consumers, how they speak publicly and in unsolicited environments, is a little over $2 billion. And so if you add those two things up, what we learned and what was humbling for us is essentially only 5% or so of your mind share of your wallet is actually going towards using social at this stage. It's growing very quickly and things are changing, but we preach about empathy and talk deeply about how do we go for a walk in our client's shoes, and we realize that when we do that, you're spending very little of your time thinking about us. And so we got excited about the opportunity there, about learning how, if we have this incredible artificial intelligence that we've developed, could it be applied to the larger universe? So about 8 months ago, we went on a journey with many of the folks in this room where we wanted to really get underneath where the pain points were in your day-to-day for the market research staples. Now, I'm really excited to talk to you about what we learned and our findings and show you some innovative methodologies I think you're going to like. We had the opportunity to record our very first conversation with one of the leading experts in focus groups. I'm going to play you a short clip.
Will you be involved in the edit of this new movie?
I'll go to the previews, but I can't sit through the
Focus group?
focus group. I can't sit through that.
Pretty
because
rough.
Then you'll hear something that's like, what were some of your other impressions about the movie? Okay, so you liked it. John over here, he liked it when Will put the funny hat on. Anyway, show of hands. How many people liked when Will put on the funny hat? 16 out of 20. But then they inevitably go positive and they go, and what did you not like about the movie? Which then becomes naturally a feeding frenzy, because you're not just going to sit there and go, I'm good. Because then you start going, well, actually, I didn't like this. And then that'll turn it, someone else will go, yeah, I hated that too.
It's the children's entertainer, Eye White.
Yo, you hated that part. I usually don't like Will Ferrell in movies, but this one, it was not bad. He usually gets on my nerves. But this one, thought he was pretty good.
We didn't stop at Will and Jerry. We put together a group of what we call the Canvas 50, and 50 researchers across the television, entertainment, and media space. And we wanted to really understand what role emerging technology can play in a researcher's actual day-to-day. And we find that this is often the disconnect with innovative technologies, many of which we're going to hear at this conference, that it very rarely makes the leap or makes it obvious how, when you leave here, how your life's going to be any different. And so it becomes an exercise in empathy and really understanding how you spend your time. So we learned that the point of research is to empower organizations to make evidence-based decisions. This is really what we're talking about here. And that there's this journey from input to insight with many friction points along the way. Input being, where are we getting the information from? Are we using social listening? Are we tracking behavior online through digital analytics? Or are we asking questions through focus groups and surveys? And insights being the story that you tell that can empower an actual decision that you feel is defensible and credible and that you're proud of. And there's many different points along this value chain that are extraordinarily challenging. And when we talked to our 50 researchers, 49 of them cited one thing as the single most challenging part about getting from input to insight efficiently. And it has to do with open-ended responses. Open-ended responses have been around for decades and is this really difficult challenge of trying to figure out why people answered the way that they did. You marked that pilot test as saying it was excellent, and then you get the little blank box where you get to say why. And there's all sorts of issues with understanding why. This is like this giant mountain that hasn't really been scaled yet. So when we looked at the problem, it turns out there are three main issues, three main applications of open-ended responses and how it affects your research process. The first is open-ended responses massively influence the way that you actually design the surveys. There are major time to value concerns and how quickly you can get from input to insight with open-ended responses. And finally, how subjective it is, that there is often a human element involved. Let's dive into this a little bit. So in survey design, in our conversations with the community, we learned that oftentimes open ends are shied away from, or even avoided altogether. That often, if you are doing open ends, you're literally just delivering a list of verbatims to someone so that they can get a sense of what's going on. But it's certainly not quantified, and if you're doing this at any sort of scale, which the people in this room are, it becomes enormously difficult. These issues compound over time, and so you're left with asking more multiple choice questions and less open-ended responses. We polled our researchers, the Canvas 50, and we learned that on average, it takes about 2 weeks to go from Excel sheet delivered with verbatims in them as part of open ends to actual insight, the story that you can tell to your boss or to your stakeholders, your clients. And on average, it's expected in less than 48 hours. There's this huge discrepancy where researchers are so time constrained and often under-resourced and have a lot going on. I don't mean to be cliche, but right, time is money. And it's this 2-week exercise that often requires lots of manual work or subjectivity and is expected to get you the insight very quickly. Emotion is so impermanent, right? Its relevancy has a deadline. If you don't understand it quickly, it has a declining value over time. So it matters. It does matter how quickly you can get these insights. So if a survey is designed, for example, to allow for open ends, but it still takes 2 weeks to get the information, it's entirely too long and it's not practical. Now, the last piece that I wanted to discuss that we learned was a human has to be involved at some point in the process. Researchers won't defend it or trust it otherwise. But what happens is we're all different, right? I could put an open-ended response in front of 4 of you, and very rarely would all of you actually agree on what it means. But especially if I put how people actually talk in front of you, it becomes difficult. So if that's true, then how do you compare things? If you're running, let's say, dozens of pilot tests over the course of a year, how do you know ever the percentage of funny you're supposed to get for your comedy, or the amount of people that are supposed to be excited after they see using the open-ended responses? But more so than that, we're running at scale the same types of surveys all the time. And there are no norms. There are no benchmarks for open-end qualitative responses. And we think that's a really interesting opportunity. Now, before we dive in more, I want to just sort of make this real a little bit. Through our journey over the last 8 months, we've been looking at a ton of data. And I want to show you just how difficult this is. This could be interactive a bit if we can. I want to show you a verbatim, and we're going to try to figure out what emotion this person is feeling. Sean is nasty. I can't with him, even though he is so hot. Anyone know what this person is feeling? Anyone have any idea? Shout it out. Can't deal with him, but he's hot. But he's nasty though too. His personality is nasty. Using modern language, right, and also slang, they can't with them also, but they find them attractive. This is complicated, and the point is that there is actually no wrong answer, but it's conflicting. It depends on what agency you're using that time, or who's hand coding your responses, or who came into work that day. Favorite part was when they were skiing. Tim is such an idiot. I love him. This is in response to how did you feel about the pilot? How do we feel about Tim? How do we feel? We like him, but we're commenting on his intelligence. They like the skiing part. This is a complicated verbatim. Last one. These are all real. When they go to Paris, I died. Literally died, like WTF. Teresa's pissed off. I hope this person is still here with us. The point is, people will take an opportunity like a blank box and fill it in with however they want. And modern language makes it extraordinarily difficult for computers to deal with this. And so we trust humans, and that leads us to all of these time to value and survey design and subjective concerns. And this is how we thought about what Canvas and our technology could potentially get underneath, which is if there were an opportunity to take artificial intelligence and not carve out another part of the social universe, but instead think about how a researcher's day-to-day job could be better, could allow you to be more focused and more productive, to eliminate friction points, and by giving you more freedom to ask more questions that are open-end and expect the insights more quickly and to be able to immediately contextualize it. Those ideas made us extremely excited. So one of the things that we heard across everybody is that artificial intelligence is scary, and that it's a little bit nebulous and sort of hard to define, and it's not actually clear how it affects really our day-to-day, short of Alexa being so awesome. But what's really interesting is that the technology for Alexa has been around for a while. It's just about the application of it. And so really what we're talking about is, well, what's the shift between what's automated and what we can expect to be automated and what's human? And focusing AI in what it's really, really good at and using it to empower what humans are really, really good at. So AI and computers are very good at distributing surveys and getting surveys in front of the right people without pestering them. And also crunching numbers, right? What it's not good at is storytelling and insights creation and using your best judgment to empower evidence-based decisions for your organization. It also historically has not been very good at quantifying emotion. And so we saw an opportunity to quantify open-ended responses, the dialogue, in the same way that you would a multiple choice. We saw an opportunity to measure the open responses, the open-ended responses, in the same way you can a multiple choice. And we thought about the possibilities of what that would mean for you as the actual researcher. So over the last couple of months, we've been working very closely with the folks at NBC and at Amazon and have worked on each of the friction points. And if we were to introduce a system that could eliminate them or empower you, what would it look like? Well, most of you get your surveys back in Excel form, right? And they have cells for open ends, and it's usually complicated. No one vendor does it the same way, unfortunately. So there's no standards for this, the actual output. So we would need to build a really turnkey way to get that data into our system and then analyze it in a way that's very insightful. So I'd love to show you guys some of the work we've done and the outputs that it leads to. So this is Canvas, and you can take one of those Excel sheets. This is the Emily Show, who's our director of marketing. And you can decide where the tabs are, where the questions are, what you want to be asking. And you have an opportunity to name them however you want. So you're going to teach Canvas what you want to include. And then in some cases, you may not want to include it. Let's go ahead and skip favorite moments. And we're going to walk through this sequential process. Here, you're going to tell us where the header is. Canvas needs to auto-suggest what you may want to filter by later. And then we're not using social data. This is your open ends. So you just need to show us where the text is. Have Canvas understand what should be analyzed. Canvas will then suggest these are the things you could filter by based upon the header, and maybe we'll want to rename this. QNum doesn't make much sense, but gender and age are great. And then we continue through the process. We'll give it a name. You'll be able to tag it. This is a pilot and a game show. This is important for benchmarks. Give it a quick description, a fast once-over, so we understand what's included, and then we're done. And what just happened was 411 verbatims were uploaded and analyzed in just a few minutes. Now, if this were in researchers' hands and you're running hundreds, thousands of surveys over a period of time, this could drive massive efficiency gains if the insights are valuable, right? Sentiment analysis has been around forever. Positive, negative, neutral. As researchers, we generally roll our eyes at that. Positive and negative is a bad way to classify language. It is a great way to think about business. Is this going to drive business? But if your evil villain is super scary, that's a great thing. That's not negative. And so we took what we know about understanding modern language and relating it to you as a researcher. I want to show you what the results look like in Canvas. So many of you are familiar with how Canvas measures emotion. Our term is called emotional reactions. This is the subset of commentary that's emotional by nature. And we're categorizing against the most common ways people talk about their feelings, whether they disliked it or found it boring or were interested in it, all algorithmically. We try to answer how people feel, but also why they feel that way. We're doing deep semantic analysis to understand the words and phrases people are using when they're feeling something. And then giving you the ability, this works as you'd expect, to drill in and see all the real ways people talk about being bored, right? Whether it's they're no longer interested, or it's boring, misspelled, or it's repetitive. It's not like it used to be. All the real ways in which people talk about their feelings. These are all open ends. Now, you want the ability to dive into a particular concept and say, well, why did they feel bored? And immediately pinpoint the ideas and see the verbatims there. It is endlessly exciting to be able to dive in and dive out in that way. And then remember, we picked the headers, so it's automatically populating all the questions and the filters. So the people that answered the question, why did you find the show to be most enjoyable? We can immediately pinpoint when people were answering that questions, when they enjoyed it, what is it that they like, or when they loved it or thought it was interesting. And a very reasonable application here is, remember, we have different cohorts that you've designed. So you want to see how different age groups or genders feel against each other. So for example, how do men feel in answering this question differently than females? And so what it's showing is how on one row you have the response from males, and on the next from females, and you're looking at the emotional reactions and the reaction rate, the measure of passion. It auto-calculates an average for you so that you can add rows and create norms very quickly. And then you can just very simply see how much happier females are and how much more love they express in response to this show, whereas men more often used the term that it was interesting, the less intense version. And then quickly to be able to expand and see the context and the proof points, which is really what's important here, is to have enough evidence to be able to make a decision based on quickly. If we take a step back and think about where Canvas came from, as I mentioned, we started using social data. We started using unsolicited public conversations happening naturally amongst friends and quantifying the emotional connection, how people felt and why they felt that way. And we got excited by this notion that you can actually combine these ideas, that solicited private responses to survey questions, if quantified with the same methodology, that there's an opportunity to strengthen the story. And that there are disparate roles for each type of research that you do. There are reasons why you take the methodologies that you have. And so, for example, in social, it can't be helpful until content is released and people are talking about it. That's the natural constraint of it. And if we think about all the amazing opportunities and business decisions taking place way before the content is released, do we even want to make the show? Do we want to greenlight the show? How do we market the show? Obviously, about 95% of the dollars are going to things that are non-social based. And we see all of these data points as being valid in their own way. And if there is a defensible, standardized methodology, you can actually, for the first time, start to see how people privately answer your questions and then choose to publicly share how they feel about the very same things. I want to show you an example. So, this is a real response to a survey, solicited private responses to the question, how did you feel about the premiere? When shows come out, many of you are doing next day surveys, figuring out how did you feel about the premiere. In this case, the researcher felt empowered and didn't have multiple choice, it was all open ends, and able to quantify very specifically for any given cohort the percentage of people that enjoyed the show because of the characters or the ending or liked the particular scene or thought it was funny or brilliant or loved it, felt mixed things about it, conflicted in some way. At a high level, what made them sad or what they thought was crazy, how people naturally talked about these things. It's interesting to see sort of how simple it is. In general, the things we feel comfortable sharing when being asked these types of questions. Now, Twitter, in contrast to this same exact episode, these are unsolicited public feelings about the premiere. Look at how different this is. So we confirm at scale that there's love and excitement and enjoyment about what happened. But the number 3 emotion is something brand new, cried. These are people literally saying it made them cry. You've got more folks that are angry and a little sad. Now this was a drama. It's supposed to have these moments of tension. You've got funny and congratulatory discussion, the more specific, annoying. There is not only new emotions, but a wider spectrum of emotions. And what's really powerful is to see these things together, is to start to understand along the content creation and marketing and release process how these different data points can play together. So when we started this journey, we knew that we were a small speck in a very large research industry, and that there was a real opportunity to get underneath how artificial intelligence can play a bigger role in researchers' day-to-day lives, and how it can empower focus and productivity if artificial intelligence is made relatable and accessible, and that there are these challenges around open ends that we all deal with. And it affects how you design surveys. It affects how long it takes to get actual answers to your clients and stakeholders who are making real decisions to affect the actual show. And then how subjective it all becomes when you have humans hand-coding things and how difficult that process truly is. And so Canvas has thought about applying our artificial intelligence to this larger ecosystem, and it makes us optimistic about how we can change the types of questions that we ask and the expectations we should have around artificial intelligence and our ability to leverage it to actually change our day-to-day and live a better life. And that's really the point. And all that makes us really, really excited. Thank you guys so much.